James's run on Starman. I was lucky enough to, a few years ago, so I try to extract from the back, I was lucky enough to interview both James and Tony Harris all about their run for Starman for Back Issue Magazine, and had the pleasure of talking to you both. And it's really a highlight of my comics journal and sports career.
Thank you very much.
And I'm not sure I think you can still get this issue digitally from tomorrow's. I believe they still have it in print edition.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a beautiful cover by Tony.
Yes.
That was his original pitch for the series. You know, I think I've talked about half the people here, or maybe more, about the Starman book that Tony and I are doing. It's not been announced yet, but as I am quite keen to point out, Tony is such a blabbermouth that anybody that has met Tony at a con, and obviously he's come to this con last year, and he's a hero, so he would have told you about it.
Yeah, he told me how many pages he was in.
Yes.
Last year.
So he's probably done about 2 or 3 more since then.
2 or 3 more pages or 2 or 3 more issues?
No, 2 or 3 more pages. He goes to lots of conventions, and wherever he is, his drawing table tends to be somewhere else. So, we're almost done with the first issue, and I think it'll be officially announced probably at the end of next year, and then it'll be published like 3 months afterwards. So it's
so you're waiting till you have all the issues in the can.
Yeah, you'd be a complete knucklehead to do anything otherwise with Mr. Harris. But I mean, the work is the people who I've shown a page or two to today or yesterday can see the level of work he's putting in, and then we're very lucky to have gotten the team back together because Wade is inking it.
Yes.
And Wade was always a wonderful inker, but he's grown, inking Stuart Immelman and people like that. I think he's one of the best inkers in the industry nowadays. So I'm very, very lucky for that. And then Greg Wright, who I don't know if he even colours anymore. He cooks a great deal. If you follow him on Instagram, he makes stock productions and all this amazing food. But he's coming back to colour it. Apparently he's terrified because he hasn't done it in a while. I was terrified when I wrote the scripts.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you have written all the scripts?
I've written all the scripts, yes.
Okay. And can you say how many?
4.
4. Okay.
It was originally going to be 6. I originally laid it out as 6 issues of 20 pages, and they said that in terms of like the Black Label books and how they sell and everything else, they'd put 4 issues, but they're more than happy to do 32 pages of art per issue.
Oh, so they're larger size issues.
Yeah, the larger size issues. So actually, 6 at 20 would be 120 pages, and 4 at 32 is actually 128. So you actually get a few more pages.
That's excellent.
So we kind of jumped into the future.
We kind of have.
But yeah, so that's where we are with that. And every time you see Tony, please tell him, more pages tomorrow.
and it's not just jumping into the future, it's sort of jumping into the past, because it's not only a reunion between you and Tony and Wade and Gregory, but it's flashing back into the run of Starman that you guys did.
It is. So, honestly, I don't know when I came up with the idea of Jack going to Japan. And I think it was somewhat because Tony and his group of artists that he used to, there was a studio called Gaijin Studios. That's where Brian Stelfreeze, I think, still runs it. Carly Hamner, Adam Hughes, a lot of people I work with. They were all there in Gaijin. It means something to the effect of, an uncivilized foreigner.
Right.
So, in terms of the Japanese looking at foreigners. So they took that name and ran with it. And he's obsessed with Japan. He and I also were going to do a series called Round Eye, which was an idea of his, and then I sort of fleshed it out and made it into more than it was originally. So that was also set in Japan. So it's definitely something that Tony's very close to. But it's times past. It takes place between issues 20, well, it's roughly 27 to 29, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, it's Tony. I shouldn't start saying too much about the project because it's far away. But it's Jack Knight in Japan. and we even create a new female superheroine in it. So there's something fun in that regard as well.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you also revisited the Starman series in a weird way when you were doing the Stargirl television series.
Yes.
Because, I mean, spoiler alert if you haven't read Starman, at the end of the series, Jack sort of hands the mantle over to
Courtney, yes. And I mean, Jeff kind of played around with it a little bit, the TV show, so that it worked without bringing in Starman, but it was we made a point of never saying that Ted Knight wasn't alive and there, and we planned that at some point, had the series gone forward, there were two plans actually. One was to hopefully do Starman and bring him in, Jack Knight, and the other one, if people have seen the show, we were setting up Infinity Incorporated, and the Shade was going to be like this initially unwilling mentor for these kids that was completely beneath him, and then of course he fall in love with all of them and become like a father figure. So that was the plan. I was actually going to run that series ahead going forward. So when it all got cancelled, it was a little bit of a gut wrench actually. And for Jeff, because Jeff had so many more plans for Courtney as well. Really good ones.
It just, you had the rug pulled out from the beginning of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody did. They let Superman run to the end, but it was all, pretty much shut down. Even people assume that the stuff that's going on with Neil Gaiman was why they ended Sandman in the second season. But they'd already said, no, just one more season and you're done. So they were really wanting to clean house before they began the new James Gunn regime.
That makes sense. I mean, it's unfortunate for you, of course. But it makes sense that you would want to do that. And you were also telling me a little earlier today that it sounds like there's going to be a chance of you revisiting a project that you did with Paul Smith, Leave It to Chance. Can you talk about that?
I can.
Or if you can't talk about it.
No, I can. Scott's announced all that. So basically, Scott W., who you may or may not know, is a guy that his world is the artist edition. He basically created the whole idea of the artist edition. And he tracked down, Paul, who is enigmatic, would be a nice word for him, just vanishes. He vanished from Leave It to Chance when we had 2 issues left before we were, the original plan of Leave It to Chance. It's heartbreaking really, because there would have been a fantastic bookcase worth of volumes by now. We were going to finish off the comic book with issue 15, and then we were going to, every year, do like a tinted volume, where we do a finite, a little bit like Brubaker's did with those cool detective books he did, with that character. Loveless? Yeah, Reckless. So that was the plan, and then just Paul, he's done this many times, he just goes, my mojo, I don't have my mojo, I'm going. And he just goes
off on his motorcycle.
Well, that's the romantic version, he just hides away in his house. But he lived, he had a place in Newbury Park in California, and then he vanished, and it was only later I found out that his father had died, and he had moved into his father's house in Colorado, so he was kind of hiding there, he wouldn't answer his phone, and he wouldn't return calls. Annoying as hell. And I remember getting a phone call from Joey Cavalieri, because he'd taken over the Spirit, and he just vanished halfway through one issue. And he also did it with Spirit Rocketeer. He did one issue of that, and then
good friend of mine from my Kubert School days, Lost and Waltz, ended up drawing the second issue of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good for him.
And then Jay Bone.
And then Jay Bone. But so I'm not raining on Paul. The fact is, we found him, and he would do the artist edition first of the X-Men material, which the thing about Paul is I was just starting now to sell some of his art, but if you see art for sale, it's probably the inker. I think it was Bob Wyacek on X-Men, various people like that. He holds on to all his artwork. It's a huge amount of it. So it's very easy for Davier to do a beautiful artist edition of the X-Men stuff that he's done. There's enough other stuff that he's going to do, like a Doctor Strange one, and then he's going to do Limited Chance. But Scott kind of got on Paul's good side, and he and I are talking again, me and Paul are, finally. So we agreed that Scott would do a collection of the Limited Chance material, a complete, like, omnibus, I suppose.
Everything we've done.
Everything we've done. So, as I said, the plan was to end the run with issue 15, and Paul has laid out both those issues. He has all, it's so close, it's so annoying. So, the plan is to kind of like gently coax him into the idea of maybe finally picking up his pencil and doing those issues. Or the layouts are pretty solid, just like making them a little bit more solid, and then maybe going to someone like George Freeman, who inked some of Paul's work on some of the Limited Chances.
Yeah, and has a very
that clean
style.
line style, yes, absolutely. So that's the plan. So this is all going to happen in the next couple of years. It's not going to happen right this minute, but it's definitely taking shape. So a little bit of patience, and you'll see some more Limited Chance, and some of it might even be new material, which is actually exciting.
That is exciting. I mean, when something like that comes around, are you tempted to go back and polish your original scripts at all?
Well, no, not really. No, I do believe in keeping the work true to how you first did it, because it's like, I mean, it's the same as how annoying it is that, like, George Lucas doesn't want to have the original cuts of Star Wars, he wants the new versions. To me, like, that's a piece of history, those original cuts, and people, you know, I can see the age of some people here, they remember when they were kids, seeing that for the first time, and the thrill of the first person perspective when the ship goes into the gutter, you know, stuff like that. Would be ghastly when I saw that. And so I believe we should preserve the work for what it is. I've heard that, like, Neil Adams has redrawn, when he was alive, had redrawn some of his DC material.
He re-inked a lot of it.
And that to me is awful.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the stuff was beautiful when he did it. You should move on and do new stuff instead. So long story short, no, I'm not tempted to. I'm just glad that we'll get it out, and people will hopefully really enjoy it, and some people will discover it. I mean, the people now, some of them were kids being read to it. I mean, I've met so many parents that, you know, older comic fans that, like, I read this with my kids, and you know, people I grew up reading with my dad and stuff like that. So hopefully those grown-up kids will now have kids that can discover it. You know,
Right.
I think it's pretty classic work.
It is, and it does have that all ages appeal.
Yes.
Like Tintin, and you can enjoy it on the level of, you know, when you're a younger person and when you're older,
Yes.
you get different things out of it.
I've tried to do that with, we'll talk about my latest works now.
Yeah.
Apart from Patra, which is, you know, slasher killers. And even that we tried to use a little bit of subtlety, but all the other books and Rose Kingdom, the Kickstarter, I've made a point of having no gory violence or nudity. I want these books to be read by everybody. And I think nowadays independent books and it's not a bad thing. It's, you know, the creator's prerogative for whatever they want to do, but I do like the idea. I remember when comic books were all ages. It even bothers me a little bit. I know I might sound like you know, I used to be quite the ladies' man before I got married. But I feel like some of the superhero books at Marvel and DC, they're more concerned with who's having sex with who than the actual plot. There's just like this weird bear hopping thing that goes on all the time, and you know, it's a part of the fact that the comic book readership has grown up with, you know, with these characters, and we have adult sensibilities now that we kind of want to see in comics. But at the same time, I do miss the idea of a book that isn't like a kid's book. You know, it's like Batman Adventures. That books are for everybody.
Right.
So that's just how I feel.
Because it doesn't necessarily mean for children only. It can just mean from kids on up.
Yes.
There's no upper limits.
No, you have to write with a sophistication. I mean, even children now, the level of, you know, you compare the writing of something like Harry Potter to even something like Narnia, which is, the difference of about 100 years, just the level of sophistication of what kids enjoy now is more than it used to be. Young adult books, YA books, when I read them, I've read some, I'm like, wow, these are very mature for kids don't want to be written down to. Mm-hmm. But I think you can also write them so that you don't have to worry about a parent being offended by something.
Right. So you mentioned you're doing a number of current books.
Yes.
At Dark Horse. You're doing Patra
with Scott Collins.
With Scott Collins. You're doing Welcome to the Maynard. Maynard. Los Monstros. I'm mispronouncing them all. And the Adventures of Luke and what Willis.
Yes, well, a couple of these have already gone to trade paperback. Mm-hmm. So Patra is a book with Scott Collins. To be honest with you, it hasn't sold that well because, I don't think Dark Horse has done a very good job of promoting any of their books. They sort of get lost somehow in the ordering. But it's a beautiful book with Scott Collins, who did all the art and all the colouring. It surprised me how really nice a colourist he is. Mm-hmm. And it's about a young girl that, for reasons that in the story, has to take on our version of classic slasher characters from the 70s and 80s. Michael Myers, Jason from Friday the 13th, the family from Hills Have Eyes. She'll kind of work her way through all of them, and there's a reason for all of that, and then there's a big payoff at the end. It'll be about six arcs, and we're working out how and where we're going to do the second arc. I'd love to do the second arc as a short one, so it's perfect as a big 48-page annual kind of thing.
Are you a big horror person? I mean, I know that you're a film buff, obviously.
I'm more a fan of Los Monsters. I'm more a fan of Universal monsters and monsters of the 50s, and even silent stuff. Gollum and Nosferatu and things like that. But I grew up with them. I actually worked in a cinema when I was at art college. I was a usher bouncer kind of guy, mm-hmm. And I had to watch all these movies, all the time, and some of them were brilliant, and some of them were not so brilliant, but I watched all of them. So I kind of, and as you get older, you enjoy, they were made for the amount of money they were made for. The reason why Texas Chainsaw Massacre is so good is because there's so much of it is implied. It's not really gory at all, and I think that's easy to do on a budget. So that's why that movie resonates. I think it's also your imagination. Well, obviously paints a more lurid picture than when you see stuff, especially stuff where the blood is the colour of spaghetti sauce. It doesn't look real, and all the stuff that the 70s and 80s movies had. But yeah, I have an affection for them. I love the psychology of Freddy Krueger, and if anyone has read Patra, there's a psychiatrist in it, an important character. And he lists he's kind of based on Donald Pleasance in Halloween, and he lists all his other patients, and I basically listed all the monsters that should be fighting in the future. And is she dead, is she not dead? There's lots of things that will slowly unfold. So that's Patra, and it's in trade, which I have downstairs, and I also have a couple of the complete sets of comic books, if you're interested. Then the next one is Welcome to the Maynard. So I was talking with I've had this idea for a while, and I pitched it to Jay Bowen, and he loved it, and he liked the idea, and I liked the idea. He's very into European comics, so doing something that had a sort of a charm to it and a simplicity to the art, which he has a very clean line style. When he's not being Jay Bowen, the penciler inker, he was inking Darwin Cook from it for all of the spirit and that issue of the shade he did with Darwin. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the way he goes. But it's beautifully done, beautifully coloured, and I think it's a charming book with hope. There's action and there's a threat. It isn't just a sweet little kid's book, but there is hope and love and forgiveness in it, which I think often that gets lost when in nowadays in comics. Things seem very negative to me. I don't know why I sound like some old guy, like, you know. I guess I am an old guy now. But so that's another book I'm very proud of, and Jay's already laid out the next kind of arc of that we're working on. Then the next one is Los Monstros, and that is the name of the city that everyone in this book lives in, which is all the Hollywood monsters from the Universal monsters and silent movie monsters. But you know, there are vampires. Some of them are more Bela Lugosi-like, some are more Nosferatu-like, and they live their lives. Even though this is definitely a children's film, it's a very good children's film. I liken that aspect to something like Zootopia, which is a city with you know, anamorphic characters, but there's cops and lawyers and people living their lives. So it's the same thing. And the first 4 issues center on a private detective named Perry Cutter, who's a werewolf, and he gets caught up in a mystery that gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And I really am proud of this series. I think it's really one of the things of recent times I'm just most proud of, and I don't know anybody that hasn't read it who doesn't enjoy it. It's out the 4 issues have already come out. I've sold all the sets I had. I have some number 1s still, but the trade will be out in January, early January. And then the last book was me trying to do 2 things really. One thing is I wanted to try and capture the essence of Limited Chance, in that the central character is a young female full of energy and life and very smart, but she has hope and all these positive emotions. And she finds out, it's set in 1901, it's steampunk, and she finds out that she is the granddaughter of Captain Nemo. And she then has to enter that world. I mean, he was always pretty a kind of an echo warrior of his age, a little bit of a criminal, I guess, but not as bad as like Robo the Conqueror, who is revealed in the 2nd issue to be the big bad of this first arc. If you know any Jules Verne stuff, or you read it on Wikipedia, it's pretty self-explanatory. But I just wanted to capture that essence of like an older male who kind of knows the world, and a young female that wants to learn it, and she's proud. Once she learns she's a Nemo, she's proud of that fact. And I just, again, I wanted to just be a positive book, and a book that very much is for, I hope, a book that young girls can read and enjoy. And then the other reason I wanted to do the book was, as I mentioned earlier, I did this first draft of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Right, which also involved Captain Nemo.
Yes, and in Lumen, Nemo, the only character that is in League. I don't want to cross over too much.
Yes.
But the first script I wrote, I'm about to launch, at the end of the year, I'll be launching my website, and on the website we'll have stuff that never got published. So that will include the first version of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is utterly different. It's all set in the 5 corners of New York at the turn of the century. It is not set in Venice and all of that. There's also, I wrote a script for a 3-part Golden Age Vigilante story with Darwin Cook that never got made. But that script, they'll be on it. So there's cool stuff to check out. But getting back to League, the version that was made with so many people's opinions that it was not something that because I'm proud of the fact that a movie got made, because that's an achievement in itself. But I always wish it could have had been better. But I got to hang out with Sean Connery, so there's that. So I wanted to kind of like do another take on that, and do something that was mine, and I felt I could take real pride in it. So that's what. And they're all great. And then the last thing, I did a Kickstarter. I'm doing a Kickstarter for a book called Rogue's Kingdom.
With Jeff Johnson.
With Jeff Johnson. And he takes a little while to do a book. It takes about 3 months to do a book. So it's a little too long for him to work anywhere else, really. So we're doing it as a Kickstarter. The first one has come out. and the second issue got funded about a month ago, and we are preparing it. We get it to printers very soon. It's almost done. And so anyone is intrigued by that, if you look up the project, there is a way that you can order the first and second issue again and catch up. And that's a sort of swashbuckling world of magic and swords, and it's fun. One of the things that Jeff and I were talking about when we were talking about working together was we both love the Three Musketeers, the version by Richard Lester with Oliver Reed.
Those are great.
They're great.
They just recently came out on the Criterion.
I got it, but I couldn't wait to get it.
Yeah.
That new French version is good, but I found it a little bit kind of drab and slow and depressing. I didn't like the Musketeers, whereas you just can't. You love the Musketeers in the 1970s version.
Yeah.
And that was another good example to me of a film. I saw that film when I was like 9 years old, maybe 8, and I was just excited by it. I didn't have to worry about someone's guts getting cut open or some awful thing. It was, and it still was sexy. Raquel Welch was sexy, Faye Dunaway was, but it was a film for all ages, to my mind.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been trying to do with all my books, but Rose Kingdom especially, even the action scenes, if you notice, the sword fights and stuff, there's nothing gory. Just, I hope this doesn't make me sound like a square, but I'm just, trying to look at the latter part of my career, doing exactly doing it as perfectly as I can. That's what I'm going with this.
So you're just applying everything you've learned over the last 30-odd years.
Well, yeah. I mean, less can be more. You can imply more. The imagination imagines more than you can show. Unless you're buying a Tim Vigil book or something, then that's a whole different thing.
I think if anyone here thinks you're square, they should read the Airboy miniseries that you did about 10 years ago, and that would quickly disabuse.
Well, I've had my moments of bad behavior.
Yeah.
And San Francisco, as my marriage to my second wife was coming to a close, was not a good time in terms of healthy living.
Mm-hmm.
And
maybe we should just give a little background for the folks who might know that. You appear as a character in that book.
Myself and Greg Hinkle appear as ourselves. So the book is about. I'm asked by Eric Stevenson at Image to do an Airboy book, and I don't want to do it. And I get Greg Hinkle up so we can talk about it, and we end up, and I kind of drag him along. He's sort of the innocent that is caught up in all this nonsense. I drag him along for this night of drugs and sex and alcohol, which is terrible. And when we wake up the next day, Airboy is standing there, and he doesn't know why he's in the real world, and we don't know either. We don't know if we're still on drugs or if this is all happening. And then he gets upset about something,
mm-hmm.
and he drags us into his world, and then we have to help him fight the Nazis. But at the same time, I'm talking. This is the thing about the book. One of the books that I was very, very impressed by was Chester Brown's Paying for It. Now, it's an adult book. It's an adult autobiographical comic about his relationship with prostitutes and how, in a way, it kind of like helped to oddly make him a better man and make him more comfortable in who he was. And I was so impressed by the candor of it and the honesty that I wanted to do something like that. But me wandering around doing coke is not a comic book. So I thought, to make it this whimsical jump between reality and fiction, but also, a lot of that stuff happened in the real world, not the Nazi.
I think you said in one of the later columns, you were like, it's all true and it's all made up.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something like that. That sounds like it's something I'd say. But I'm not averse to doing mature material, but there's a time and place, and I may well do something else that's more adult and graphic at some point, but I'm just not right in that place at the moment.
Right. Would you? I'd like to talk a little about your Hollywood career. Well, I suppose you've had a few stints in Hollywood. I mean, is it?
Yeah, what happened was I came to America by chance. I had just gotten a gig to, London's Dark was about to be published. That's my first graphic novel, London's Dark. And then I was asked by Matt Wagner to take over Grendel from him. And ultimately, I wrote, did I write all of it? I wrote 3 issues, and actually what's a little interesting sidebar, I've always wished that this could happen. They were drawn by Philip Bond, do you know that?
Yes.
So Philip Bond, who's married to Shelley Roberg, or actually Shelley Bond now.
Yes.
I saw the art, I mean, and it was wonderful, but it was very different from Teddy Christensen. And I've always thought that doing a collection, it's apparently in a storage place in England, and Philip Bond keeps forgetting to get it. But if he ever got it, putting that together with the Teddy Christensen version, so you see the same story told by 2 superb artists, but with very different styles and how they interpret the script.
Right.
That would be a fantastic book.
Yeah.
So what happened was I was doing it for Comico, and they went bankrupt. And then Dark Horse eventually kind of bought, because they owned a piece of Mage and Rebel, so they kind of bought that, and then there was a delay and a delay and a delay. And then when it was time to relaunch Grendel, Matt said, I can't really relaunch Grendel with your book. I need to be the one that relaunches it.
Right.
So what was going to happen after my run was going to be War Child. And that ended up being the first thing, and then Grendel Tales.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the sort of slightly convoluted story. For that, Grendel Tales was like the first thing I did. Came to America. A friend was opening a comic book store, and he wanted somebody he trusted just to keep an eye on the place while the American staff were getting used to things. Mm-hmm. And I ended up staying out here, and I met a young man who was working for IRS Films, which is Stuart Copeland, Stuart Copeland's brother. And they had me write a script which was rewritten, but that got me a CIA agent, and then from there I began to write films. So I was doing that while I was doing comics, and then I wrote a spec script with David Goyer, and that got me more work. And I've written, I mean, the ratio then, I think it's even worse, but the ratio then of scripts that are written to films that are made is like 1 in 10. Mm. You know, all these, I mean, I've read some amazing scripts that never got made for sometimes for the dumbest reasons. Mm-hmm. So I wrote, you know, I wrote Hot Wheels, I wrote Akira, I wrote like 6 or 7 other scripts in the studios. The only one that got made was League. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote one for Sony that was kind of a very much like the Three Musketeers movies. It was a movie about the Sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood. And it was, again, that would be on my website. And I was so proud of it. And again, it didn't get made because William Morris rushed through that shitty Russell Crowe version.
Right.
So,
and I think that one was massively rewritten as well.
Oh, probably. Yeah. So it was so kind of depressing that I really kind of went back into comics. Mm-hmm. And you know, comics don't pay as much, and it can be painful when you work with the wrong people, heartbreakingly painful. But when you have the right person, the right editor, it happens more often than not. And everybody's on accord. The vision of your initial vision and the finished comic is pretty close. Whereas when you write a screenplay, it could get rewritten, mm-hmm. and then even if they film it, you've got the director's vision, and that can be different than yours. And it's a case of compromise often. You know, and obviously you've got, you know, the Kevin Smiths and the couple that wrote the 2 writers that wrote Ed Wood.
Yes.
And Tim Burton read it and said, okay, I'll do it. Well, what about rewrites? I don't need a rewrite.
Yeah, it's like, this is my next movie.
But that is rare.
Yes.
So, you know, I went back into comics, but I enjoyed film, and, you know, I was paid quite a lot of money at the time. And that was, you know, and I lived in Hollywood, and I was out of my first marriage, and I sound like Mickey Rooney, don't I? But I was out of my first marriage, and I was living a nice bachelor's life in Hollywood, and it was a fun time. Mm-hmm. But I always, you know, I was still working on Starman. There was some crossover, and I was determined to make that as good as I could, and I'm you know, I'm proud of how I ended it, and the fact that I didn't get distracted by film work or the other temptations that come along with all of that.
What was it like directing your own script when you did comic book films? Good.
That was fantastic, and it was like the greatest thing ever. There was nothing like directing. There's nothing like directing. Directing is amazing.
And maybe we should give a little background if folks haven't seen the movie. It's about a couple of rival comic shop owners.
Yes.
And they discover a extremely rare collection dating back to the Golden Age.
Yeah, like the equivalent of the Mile High Eclipse.
Right.
Of old.
Right. And they're just, and there's an old woman played by Eileen Brennan.
Eileen Brennan, she's fabulous. Bit nutty, but fabulous.
Yes. You have a wonderful cast. You've got
Donald Lowe, Natasha Leone, Michael Rappaport, Carrie Elways, DJ Halls, actually Danny Masterson. I mean,
yes,
you know, it was
before all that.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. It was only made for $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing I didn't really understand at the time was that $1 million meant that I had 20 days. Now, if you obviously you've seen the film, there's you know there's gunfights, there's the van that goes in the river, there's all this stuff.
It starts out as sort of almost like a heist film or maybe a comedic farce, and then it becomes sort of a neo-noir by the end.
Yeah, well that was my intention, was to play. I mean, this was at the time that like Tarantino was doing Dusk Till Dawn, you know, Robert Reedus was, but the idea of changing a thing midway, that appealed to me, and I like the fact that like Donald Lowe, Natasha Leone, all of those actors have an ability for comedy, but they also can do dramatic roles. So I thought they were perfect in that regard. I was always bothered. Later on, I found out that people that saw the movie thought it was a movie about me hating comic fans. And it really wasn't. It was about me, what I was going through, where like my own obsessions with collecting and stuff. You can live your life and get out there and, you know, smell the flowers and still enjoy comics. That was the message I was trying to get across. But some people took offence to the film, but I loved making it, and it was, you know, it was just delightful. I always wanted to direct more, but it was so hard to get an independent movie made. It's really hard to get them made. You think it's easy, but the people that give you the money, they have, like, this guy is worth $50,000 in the Yugoslavian market. This guy, it's like a formula of how much they will justify doing a movie for. And the thing, I was thinking about the humour of it. There should have been more like nuanced humour, but like Blood Simple, which is a much simpler story, they had like 30 days, or maybe even more than 30 days to do that film. Mm-hmm. So when you have 20 days, and like the day that the truck goes in the water, I also had got like 4 pages of dialogue on the gunfight, and then there's, you know, they're setting up all the pyrotechnics, and I'm only in another part of the set directing the actors on that whole little scene. It was insane. So there wasn't the time to like really workshop the material and get the best out of it, and that's a shame. I wish I had known that going in, and I maybe could have worked out how to do it. But I was learning on the fly. I mean, I have a degree in filmmaking, but it doesn't. That's nothing like the real world.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean that's special education.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm sure some folks out here have some questions about David's career. Does anyone?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Like with Starman, with the Golden Age, with you know, with other works, you've given a lot of thought to older characters from the Golden Age and everything. And I was wondering if there's anything when you were reading about them or anything that surprised you.
you for that question. It's a good question. The thing about the Golden Age was that, and then Starman, following on from that, this was at a time pre the internet. Like now, you can, the most obscure comic book character from 1940, from an obscure publishing company, you can find information on that book. You can see what they look like. But back then, it was whatever got reprinted in like 100-page DC books and stuff like that. So, growing up as a kid, like someone, I don't know if they're here now, someone said like their favourite books growing up were The Legion and the Justice Society, Earth 2. Mine was Earth 2. I had every Earth 2 appearance, you know, Jay Garrick, Al Pratt, beautiful Gil Kane art, Al Pratt and Ray Palmer, Atom. I had all of these books, all of the Justice League, Justice Society crossovers. But then what the biggest help I had was Steranko's History of Comics. I don't know if you guys have read that, but there's two volumes. They're just amazing. And the first one covers DC books, and then the second one covers quality books, which I was falling in love with due to like Lou Fine, discovering the art of Lou Fine and Rick Crandall and everything else. So in terms of your question, I think one of the things that surprised me were the quality characters, which I just found out DC doesn't own them. They only own the stories that they do with them. Like, we could do a quality book together. Then give me ideas, we'll do it. You know,
the characters are in the actual public domain.
Yeah, because PS Comics does Black Hawk, they do Plastic Man, they do right. They're reprinting all the original books now. They're available to Baltimore. But Steranko's descriptions of those heroes and those characters kind of got the wheels rolling. And then the other inspiration was actually Roy Thomas's All-Star Squadron, especially first like 36 issues. Unfortunately for Roy, when they did the Crisis, it's interesting that like the Justice Society only had Superman and Batman, Superman in 2 issues, Batman in 1 issue, and yet you eliminate them from the Golden Age, and they're kind of like the wing nut that is holding the plane together. And you know, Green Arrow, it's odd that these characters that weren't necessarily even a part of Justice Society, their removal affected them somehow. So he had to deal with that. And I think scrambling to do that, he kind of compromised the narrative a bit later. But those first 36 issues were one with Jerry Ordway and Rick Hoberg and Mike Macklin, is that his name?
Yes.
Inking, or trading off with Ordway, inking and penciling. They were a big inspiration. In terms of surprises, I guess, I'm not doing a good job of specifically answering what you've asked. I'm kind of fudging it a little bit. But I guess the main thing was that as I began to investigate the Golden Age, I found so many other interesting characters. And, you know, one thing I'm proud of, jumping ahead, but I did the Shade story with Darwin Cook that I mentioned. And in that issue, there's a character called Madame Fatal, first transvestite superhero. And in the original book, in the original stories, he was looking for his lost daughter. And that was part of, he was an actor, he would dress up as this old lady, and then this old lady would start kicking crap out the bad guys. But there's actually an image of him and her in one of the big scenes of all the heroes standing around in issue 4. There's an old lady in a red dress. That's actually Madame Fatal. So he was looking for his daughter, his missing little kid, and I have Shade give him the address, the location of his daughter. So I actually resolved 70-year-old continuity, which I was very proud of that. So anyway. Yeah, the surprise was just the degree of these characters that had so much potential that most of it I kind of started finding from Steranko's History of Comics, and I would recommend anybody that can get hold of it to read them. They're really well done.
I mean, I think for a while you had a bit of a fear of being typed as like the Golden Age guy, like you would be the guy who came in.
Yeah, I mean, I was for a while, and now I wish, I don't mind it as much as I did. But then you're young and you want, I don't know what. It just felt like I didn't want to be pigeonholed. But, you know, since then, you know, Jeff has come along and he's kind of done a good amount of Golden Age. Jeff Lemire's current book is great. You know, so everybody's, you know, slowly there are other people that are also doing it, I think, better than I did, you know. So I'm happy with that.
And